Hi guys, my name is Carla and welcome to my plant channel Chlorophyll is the New Black. Today I'm going to do a terrarium of Jewel orchids. So these beauties, I just purchased them yesterday. As you can see, this one is the beautiful Macodes lowii. That has a dark foliage with kind of pinkish or reddish veining. And I also acquired this Ludicia discolor nigrescens major. Sorry for the pronunciation, but I will put the tag anyway on the screen. So this is kind of a dark green as well, with a stripe in the middle of the leaf. Now these ones are varieties that I think are really uncommon. I have done terrariums before and they have actually worked pretty well. My best example is my last terrarium of also Jewel orchids. I really struggled to keep the Macodes petola alive. So I bought it 2 times before, it died on me, and now the new one is just beautiful. I will put an update of that terrarium very soon. I have even one of my Ludicia discolor alba flowering as well. But since that proves to be a quite stable environment and my Jewel orchids like it, I will do that for these ones as well, so that hopefully they can survive for these 3 weeks that I'm away. This is per se not a decorative terrarium, but if you would like to do a decorative terrarium, it's the same principle. So I want to show you how I do it and how it has worked for me. What I'm going to be using for this terrarium is hydrocorals, also some sphagnums, and some orchid mix that I bought in the store. And well, it's, to me, looks more like a terrestrial orchid mix, but okay, that's perfect because that's indeed what we have. So these two are actually terrestrial orchids, so that's perfect. And let's start with it. It's actually pretty easy. So I will start by putting the hydrocorals in the bottom, and this will help to separate extra water that pools in the bottom from the orchid roots. And also later on it will actually pull this water up to the orchids. So I added about 1 centimeter or maybe 2 of hydrocorals. Then next what I want to do is put a little bit of sphagnum so that it actually absorbs the water up to the rest of the roots. And then what I want to do is add my mix. Now that the bottom is basically prepared, what I want to do is to check the roots of the orchid and put them in new sphagnum. I have no idea for how long these orchids have been in this sphagnum, so I will use new sphagnum. For that, I will just gently squeeze out the pot. You can see that there is a root here actually. Gently squeeze out the pot. Now the orchid is out, and trying to not disturb too much the roots, I'm going to try to take out this sphagnum. Actually, the sphagnum doesn't smell bad at all, so probably it's not that old. You can start to see the roots here, and they're quite fuzzy. And there's this new root tip that is actually growing, so that's great. The orchid is in good conditions. I hope it keeps like this. I don't want to disturb too much the roots, so I think that I will leave it with this amount of sphagnum, because I also don't want to set it back too much. It's already under quite some stress because I'm taking it to a totally different environment to where it was. So yeah, it's not a very good idea to damage too much the roots. So you can see that it has a healthy root system. It's actually plump, not mushy, so that's a good sign. And I can see root tips there and also here. So this is also a new root and a new root. So that's great. So now I'm going to put it into the terrarium. And I am going to just place it, and I'll continue with the rest, meaning the other orchid. You can see here that they had it with bark in the bottom and then some sphagnum. That's also something that Jack from Woven Orchids, that is where Woven Orchiden, that is where I bought the orchids. He told me that the best thing to do is to keep some bark in the bottom and sphagnum moss in the top. Oh look, it's branching already. That's great. You see this knob here? Let me show you. This here, it's a new... Yeah, it's branching. It's a new... oh look in here. Oh, it looks so beautiful. Okay, this I won't disturb anymore. You can see some fuzzy rods here. That's great. Okay, I'll just leave it like this as well. I don't want to disturb it any longer. So what I'm going to do is to indeed put this one here as well. And then I will locate the new growths more in the middle so that they can sprout out on this side. So they are basically there. So now what I'm going to do is put the rest bark to locate it, to lock the orchids, and then just a little bit of sphagnum on the top, and then again bark. Now this looks pretty nice. Actually, now looking at it, it kind of makes me feel like it could definitely be a decorative vessel if I put maybe a nice stone on the side and then some decorations. So let me see what can I find, and then yeah, so to make it look even prettier. Okay, I found a few stuff, and I decided that first I want to water the terrarium so that it actually, the walls now have a little bit of bark and so on, so I don't want that to fall over the decorations. So I'm going to wash the sides, and this is already kind of part of the watering. Okay, now that it's watered, I'm going to clean the walls. So now I am indeed going to put the decorations. So I'll start with the gravel. So I'm just going to do a patch here for now and put this rock in here. And put this piece of coral that I had in here. Let me give you a close-up from the top. Okay, light doesn't want to be my friend for today, but you can see here in the first plane the flower spike of the Ludicia discolor nergens. Oh, I'm butchering that name, I know. And then you can see here the beautiful patterns that actually contrast, also the greens. And then here we have this coral piece with some aquarium gravel. Just one rock that I picked up somewhere. And I mean, it's pretty simple, but I think it looks pretty good. And the idea of this was just to preserve these orchids alive, but now it actually has turned as well into a decorative container. So I hope you like it. been 1.5 months and the terrarium still looks fantastic. As you can see, all plants are still alive. Even when I was gone, they preserve humidity, so that's great. I decided to add that and that one, so those are 2 orchids that I actually acquired recently. And I just put them there in the meanwhile so that they would still be alive for a while, keeping up the moisture that the container can hold. And well, I'm actually going to plant them inside. I have another Jewel Orchid that I bought 2 years ago and I have it in a separate container. And I would like to also add it to this terrarium because, as I mentioned before, I have seen that Jewel Orchids do great in this type of terrariums. This will for sure improve as well the contrast and the looks of this terrarium. What I will do first is take out the orchid from where it was. And as you can see, you can even see a fluffy root here already outside of the sphagnum. So I'm not going to disturb it either, I'm just going to directly plant it. And for this I will remove the orchids that I just overposed the last weeks to accommodate and have a better setup in the terrarium. And after I have it like I want it, then I will add the next orchid. Finally, I also have this Oncidium pumila that tends to get a little bit fussy when it is not moist, so it can even die if it goes completely dry. So I am trying to prevent this by also keeping it here in a moist environment with the rest of the orchids. I think that they will do a good match and it's the best chance that I have to keep it alive, since I don't have humidifier or any way to actually adjust the humidity in this room where I have these orchids. What I also want to mention is that care for these terrariums is very easy. I try to use as much as possible distilled water, sometimes mixed with a little bit, like 1/3 of tap water. Since this terrarium doesn't have a drainage hole, I also don't want to foster that a lot of salt buildups get trapped in the soil and in between the roots and afterwards burn the roots. That's why I used mostly distilled water. On top of that, I keep it in a warm environment. This orchid terrarium is my office that is in between 22-25 degrees all the time, so they actually have done great. Additionally to this, I water it just a little bit, not to keep it like super soggy, just water it a little bit around the orchids twice a week. And with this is enough to preserve the orchids thriving and doing good. Important to know about the watering is that I am doing this twice a week because the environment is dry enough in the outside to actually make the sphagnum almost dry completely. So my cue to water is that I just add a little bit of water and check every 3-4 days how the sphagnum is. If it is approaching dryness, then I water again. If it's still wet, then I leave it. So that's basically my cue to water. And besides that, I just don't have it in direct sunlight. I just have it where it can receive some indirect light. And it is doing great. So as you can see, the care that you have to give them is minimum. And it's not necessarily difficult to get these jewel orchids thriving. I know that they are said to be very fussy. As long as you offer the right conditions, they will just do good for you. I hope that this video helps you and also these care tips that have worked for me, and that you decide to do a project like this. It just looks very elegant and beautiful. In addition, I wanted to say that if you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up and you can consider to subscribe to the channel. I post a lot of projects with plants and also some care tips, so if you think this can be for you, give it a thought and subscribe. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.